They're gonna do. Use this brush.
Get rid of your kitchen I'm pushing button. Hey, I'm happy, look. Video of that Australian lady being dragged off by the police is obviously Australia. Sit still, mate, shut up, mate, you're going to an internment camp. What the hell's going on over there? Have you seen that footage of that, like, well, I was going to say old lady, but she's exactly my age. So I'm going to arrest it. Let's have a look at it because it's pretty fascinating.
You cannot arrest her.
She doesn't look like a criminal, does she? You know, I don't know how you've been schooled to profile and vilify criminals. Maybe that there's some terrible demographic information in that. Or maybe it's just good old-fashioned balaclava under the face. Well, it's not. It's from next door, Jean. What are you doing to Jean?
She was in there, she refused to show us.
She was in the corner, she was notified.
Yeah, you don't have that.
I'm happy to show you my information.
You don't have that.
I like on the back of that policewoman's uniform it says liaison officer. Like what's happening here is a liaison. Oh, should we have un liaison? Bonjour. Right, get me back in the fucking van!
What are you doing? What are you putting that back away, man?
Leave her alone.
A 46-year-old woman, young, was arrested by 5 police officers in Queensland, Australia for failing to show her vaccine passport. The owner said that the business had been fully compliant with the state and federal public health directives. He said it was the first time Rebecca had visited the establishment. It was her first time coming here, and first time she's been out since December 17th, cafe owner Matt said. She thought, bugger it, I'm going to have a coffee today, and look what happened. That's more the Australia that I recognise. Ah, bugger it, I'm going to have a coffee. It's not this madness that we're seeing on the screen. Also, here's a person who's evidently taken the lockdowns pretty seriously. She's not been out of the house for a fortnight. Oh, today, maybe I will venture outside. Probably it's not so bad. Everybody says Australia, after all, still a free country, and our police force, they work for us after all. Maybe I'll even stop for a hot beverage and enjoy a bit of time talking to my fellow Australian. I'm going to fucking liaise on you! Get in the back of the van!
What are you doing?
Leave her alone.
Okay.
Leave her alone.
Also, that police van's like hermetically sealed. It looks like you've only got a certain amount of air in there. Don't breathe too hard in there either. You've only got 10 lungfuls.
I hope you guys are happy with yourselves.
Yes. That is our own money.
If you're finding yourself justifying that, you've been propagandized, because there's some things where you can just sort of tell from your initial feeling, no, that's not right. Like just your initial feeling of seeing that woman being handled so aggressively. Sometimes you see images of police brutality and you're like, oh no, but that person was there and they were carrying this and they done it. You go, no, I don't know, man, that don't feel right. Can't you sort of see that in pursuit of a particular goal you have transgressed against the principle under which you are purporting to operate? Because the whole idea surely is human life is sacred. And because human life is so sacred, any measures we must take are necessary. But if that ends with, get in the fucking van, then it's like, well, I thought we were doing this because human life is sacred. Then if you take that off, then it's like, well, what other objectives and what other agenda could it be? I'm not saying engage with conspiracy theory. I'm saying this sanctity of human life argument that you're advancing doesn't seem to hold up in light of the behaviour we're witnessing.
Why is she under arrest? Why is she under arrest?
I've tried negotiating with a police officer at the point where you're actually a bit in the van, and at that point, it's definitely over.
You pay my wages, of course you do, yeah.
Yeah, you pay my wages. I heard that last time we were throwing an old lady back in the van.
I am happy to provide my name and address.
Yeah, that would seem like enough at this point. Name and address, pop round later, have a bit of a chat. I mean, she doesn't seem like a serious threat to society. I mean, it was hard enough. Do you remember when what used to be mobilised against us were fear of religious or racial differences in order to stoke hatred doubts and suspicions around potential terror in the good old days of 10, 15, 20 years ago. At least then there was an onslaught of bigotry and conditioning that had gone on for a generation to prepare you for the prejudicial view they were inviting you to undertake. But now it's like, right, you know little old ladies, what, like my mum and my nan? She was a terrorist.
You cannot arrest her.
You can't arrest me.
Officers attended a Yurang cafe on January the 12th to ensure the business and its patrons were complying with the current Chief Health Officer's public health directions. The bureaucratic language, the technocratic ease, the way that we're being prepared for a kind of new reality. Hello, I'm the Chief Health Officer, and in order to protect your health, we're going to hustle you quite aggressively into the back day. But that's bad for my health. Don't question the Chief Health Officer. Australia's peak doctors' body has criticised an unethical proposal to charge unvaccinated people for their medical care that's being considered by New South Wales government. Images like this, discourse like this, conversation like this is obviously being used to legitimise new legislation. So whilst this, of course, is a titillating video to watch, let's have a look at what's really happening. The state's health minister, Brad Hazzard, confirmed the government was looking at forcing people who had not received the jab to pay for their medical bills if they required hospital treatment for COVID. This is an idea that you're sort of being slowly prepared for, that's being introduced, the idea of culpability. Why would you draw the line there, though? If its idea is you're not doing something that you could do that's later put a burden on the state, well, how do we start looking at, I don't know, diabetes, obesity, injuries sustained while drinking, lung cancer? I mean, where does it end? Where does it end? And I don't even mean that as a purely rhetorical device. My concern would be that it does become that. Sorry, you smoked. Sorry, you're fat. Sorry, you ate badly. I mean, why not? The idea represents a radical departure from Australia's system of universal health care because it didn't used to be evil. The Australian Medical Association President, Dr. Omar Khurshid, said, the big issue from a medical point of view is that it's really not ethical or the right thing to do to limit access to healthcare based on people's previous health choices. Yeah, it isn't, is it? And there are some things that are more important than the contemporaneous conflict and conflagration around the contentious issue of coronavirus. Loads of us have different opinions. There's a variety of data. We're all picking our own pathways and courses, but there are some things that the God of the belly informs us are right and wrong, and it's, you know, respect for one another, care for one another, respect for people's individual choices, an open heart and a faithful mind when dealing with complex and complicated issues. These are sort of little guiding principles we can refer to when in doubt. I think it'll be a real shame if through this pandemic we lose our compassion, we lose our humanity and our care for fellow Australians, even if they've made choices we think are unwise or incorrect. That's just a much more rational view. You know, be compassionate, be kind, recognise you can't actually, well, you can create a society where you bundle women into the backs of vans on account of what looks like a kind of bureaucratic misunderstanding, but then what society are you protecting? What principles, what values are now at the top of your set of hierarchies? In November, the former New South Wales Premier, Bob Carr, called for Australia to follow Singapore's example after its government announced it would start charging people who are unvaccinated by choice for their medical bills. In the US, companies are telling unvaccinated workers to pay more for health insurance. At Delta Airlines, unvaccinated workers would have to pay an extra $200 a month for health care insurance. In some countries, including the US, companies have insisted that staff receive coronavirus vaccines or else pay monthly fees, or even lose their jobs at employers such as United Airlines, tech company Google and Citigroup. Furniture retailer IKEA has cut sick pay for unvaccinated UK staff who are forced to self-isolate COVID-19. I suppose once you introduce these kind of measures, which appear to be happening incrementally on a global scale, population. Now, I know a good many of you watching this will think, well, too right, and that's fine. But I would say wherever you stand on this issue, if you're willing to make allowances when it comes to particular principles, it might lead to unexpected places.
You have been arrested.
This is ridiculous.
What a fuck country we live in.
Yeah, we are. We are in complete fuck, mate.
That police officer's got like an infinity tattoo like on their arm, like this sort of infinite interconnectivity of all things. The good old circle of life.
How could you do that to a lady? How could you you do that to that lady?
How are they not having a Mitchell and Webb "We the Baddies" hands moment?
Hands. Are we the baddies?
I'm so embarrassed to be an Australian. That is disgusting.
Even from a religious level, that does seem like a lot of vans for one middle-aged lady.
That is disgusting.
As you know, this is an issue that is difficult to discuss and one that is subject to some censorship at every level, so you necessarily have to be cautious. But when you look at that video and you hear the idea of society of many tiers being introduced, perhaps you look at it this way, perhaps you can see, well, there are already many tiers dependent on class and economics and race and sex and gender, so what? But generally I thought that was a bad thing. I thought we'd agreed that's something that needed to be altered, addressed, that fairness is something we're trying to create. Same way as we thought that bodily autonomy was something that was sacred and something that we were prizing for individuals. It seems now that many of these principles are mutable if a particular agenda can be pursued. And what we're interested in on this channel is what agenda is being pursued. And this is not getting into conspiracy territory. Simply have a look at who is benefiting financially, who is benefiting from the introduction of particular regulations, and see if you can build a narrative from that. I invite you to participate in that process with us, because obviously I'm just a person. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's best for me. I make mistakes every single day. And I certainly don't know what's best for you. Together, I do believe that we can discover truth, real and objective truth, and make a difference. But it will require that we are open and compassionate to people that have different perspectives from us. That will be a requirement. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Give this video a like, pass it around, get people talking about this stuff. It's only through conversation we're ever gonna change the world. If you enjoyed this video, please have a look at this one, similar themes, and please have a look at Awakening, my side channel. If you want to join my mailing list, please do so here. It's just one click away and you'll know everything I'm up to this year. Festivals, live events, things that, unless you're Australian, you might be able to attend. Please, most of all though, stay free.
Today, our world demands innovation, and for us, that's nothing new. We've implemented a GBAC-approved safety strategy to protect all who walk through our doors. So rest assured, because while routines may look different than the past, your future is safe with us.
Happy Monday. Oh, it's a glorious Monday. What a joy. You haven't been murdered yet by a nutbag. It's true, we have an epidemic of crazy people, what we used to call the criminally deranged, or the Views audience. But they're everywhere, on the streets, on the subway. One is sitting to my right. But they're also in our city halls, our governments, in our district attorney's offices, from New York to Chicago to LA to Baltimore. And they're spreading faster than Omicron. It's not funny anymore. On Saturday morning, a maniac waited as a train entered the Times Square subway station before he happily pushed an Asian woman to her death. Michelle Elisa Go, age 40, was murdered that morning. The killer stuck his tongue out at the police like a third grader out the window of a school bus. The perfect metaphor for bail reform or any other garbage that passes as social justice reform. But if you dare ask, why was he out on the street? You're probably racist. Or worse, a Republican. Meanwhile, this punk just murdered a teenager, allegedly, in a Bronx Burger King. It's his idea of having it his way under the new Attorney General. Here he is shouting about reparations and slavery. Hell, he sounds like every Democrat member of Congress when they're on Twitter. And if you disagree with him, well, you're probably racist too. Meanwhile, on the opposite coast, a UCLA grad student was fatally stabbed by, you guessed it, a deranged creep. Brianna Kupfer, age 24, was alone working when a man believed to be homeless knifed her to death. Why was he out on the streets with a knife? That's probably your fault because you just don't care enough. There's also Sandra Shells, a hard-working nurse who died after being attacked by a homeless man near the LA Union Station. His woke DA, who says he doesn't want to send another direct that the deviant will be attacked. Oh yeah, God forbid a guard uses the wrong pronoun. Gascon recommends home confinement for the perv because they's trans. Cool, George. How does the guest bedroom in your house sound, you clown? But if you agree with me, I bet that makes you transphobic. I gotta hand it to the deviant. They're grifting the grift, meaning they see how to exploit the woke insanity with the help of progressive lawyers. They are woke to the woke, if you will. By the way, can we stop calling these people woke? They're as woke as the statues they love to tear down. Meanwhile, those woke prosecutors may not be criminally deranged, but they're racking up impressive numbers that would make any Batman villain envious. The only thing that separates them from the psychos they're setting free is a trip to the Men's Warehouse and a thesaurus. The Joker has nothing on Larry Krasner. Under that fool, Philly's gone from a low of 248 murders in 2014 to 562 killings in 2020, a new all-time record. If only the Eagles' offense could put up those kind of numbers yesterday. Like I have watched the game. The victims of this violence are almost entirely non-whites living in the poorest parts of the city. But if you plead for solutions, you'd probably be called a racist. Because lots of those killers are also black. Hell, the KKK couldn't ask for a better solution. Do nothing. Meanwhile, Chicago, under Kim Foxx, has seen more than 800 homicides in 2021. Levels not seen since the 90s crack epidemic. The good news, Fox has saved the city a few $1 billion by not prosecuting homicides. So you go, girl. And if you don't like what she's doing, well, then you're probably racist and misogynist. Of course, there's the hostage crisis at the synagogue in Texas, where an anti-Semitic fiend took a rabbi, among others, hostage in order to free a terrorist. Initially, the FBI said this attack wasn't related to the Jewish community. Probably. They were waiting to pin it on a white supremacist.
We have seen an incredible rise in rhetoric that is anti-Semitic being trafficked all around the country, because we were seeing an exponential rise in hate crimes and an exponential rise in the formation and the membership of these extremist organizations, many of which are white supremacy organizations.
Way to jump the gun, you jackass. Of course, even mentioning the maniac's religion makes you Islamophobic, and we don't want to make the squad cry again. I just hope the hostage situation won't keep the Biden administration from going after those domestic terrorists attending school board meetings or voting rights acts.
I will defend the right to vote. Our democracy against all enemies.
Yes! He's a monocle away from being the actual Monopoly guy. Host of Kudlow on Fox Business and former director of the National Economic Council, the great Larry Kudlow.